Yo, what's up, everyone? This is Expanded Understanding, episode number, I think it's 71. That's probably right. It is the 3rd of July. I'd like to thank you all for being here. Anybody who's watching this in a replay or anything like that, we really appreciate you taking the time to stop by the channel. It's kind of with a bit of like a heavy heart that I streamed today because of the thing that was on the screen right there. I know most of the people that probably come to this channel aren't super familiar with the streaming community, but the person that was on the screen was very much so one of the kind of pioneers in the streaming space, and he very much so also struggled with depression a lot. Uh, we were personally into a lot of the same games, and it was through him that I really have studied. Well, primarily because of how much of an innovator that he was, I've really studied how well human interaction has kind of grown on the internet. I've studied psychology a lot through it and met a lot of people that are just so unbelievably influential to my life. And in many ways, it's really, really interesting because a lot of those people wouldn't even know how influential they were to my life. And maybe I don't know how influential I am to a lot of people's lives too. And that's really like why I even take the time to get on here and do this. It's the whole reason why I ever even looked into the space. I've always very much so wanted to help people. And as I watched streaming and really just kind of the internet grow up and watching where it was going, streaming was apparently one of the places it was definitely going to go. You know, it was TV done live. It was true reality TV. It was a true way to be able to like see into someone's life. Very much so in the first place, started out as like people streaming for no reason or mostly playing video games. But being that I was always into video games myself, I was definitely right at home in these kinds of spaces. And there's a lot of people in these spaces. Uh, that the standard for the space is really usually people that are pretty focused on themselves, and these people generally actually don't do very well because this entire thing runs off of community. Some people really did try to give a lot back and really did care about other people and really did care about basically like managing their platform. And the person who was on the screen at the beginning of the stream, uh, this man here, this is Byron Bernstein. He went by the name Reckful. But he very much so was a person that not only cared about community, but I think it's extremely safe to say that streaming wouldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for him. Unfortunately, despite how much of an innovator he was in the space, how likable of a person he was to his viewers, how great he was at video games, how successful he was at investing, a whole lot of things, positives in there. Uh, he, like many of us, deals with a lot of issues from maybe our past or maybe looking into our future. Basically, what we're talking about is functionally depression or sadness. It's effectively leading to depression. And, streaming's a really weird space. Like, I've been on enormous streams, I've been on small streams, and there's one continuity between all of it, and that it's that, like, no matter the size of the stream, it's still actually just like you sitting there behind all of your gear that you have all set up. You have all these monitors and all this sound shit and cameras and everything. You got like this whole production going on, but like in most cases, at the end of the day, it's just you sitting there. And I think a lot of us have this feeling basically like all the time in our life. And maybe when we're watching like streaming and stuff like this, or even like TV, we look at these things and we think that these people have like a very different life than us. And I think it's important to understand that at all scales of that, humans are dealing with human problems. It really doesn't matter what you're doing with your life. You still have human problems, and other people that you meet have human problems. And some of what we're going to talk about tonight, and I don't know how deep I'm going to go into any of it or anything, like, in a certain way, I, I don't even, a lot of this for me is really just like paying homage to a lot of things that have helped me get here. That maybe they just, they have no way of knowing that they ever got me here. And I'm not going to go through listing all of them inside of this stream, uh, but very much so just doing this with the intention of really like showing respect to those other people that were out there, showing respect to really all the other people that are out there, recognizing them all as just people who have human problems, and share a little bit about my own personal story about what I've done to make sure that I could be somebody that could make a positive impact in other people's lives. Because like most people don't really realize it, but up until the age of 34, the most likely thing to kill you is yourself. And the only reason that that goes away after 34 is because other natural things become more likely functionally. What this says is that realistically, like the forefront, the front lines, the most important thing inside of the evolution of the human being, the expansion of the consciousness as we understand it through the human experience, that's 100% our own minds. That's where we perceive ourselves from, regardless of whether I'm standing in the middle of a huge crowd, standing at the pulpit getting married to the love of my life, or sitting here doing a stream inside of my house by myself. Regardless of how many people it feels like are watching you, or how many people are going to end up seeing that, you're always inside of your own head. And this is in a certain way a blessing and a curse. And I think we really can do a lot to get. I struggle with the word control a lot of times because it feels forceful to me. Governance, the ability to manage what's going on inside of your mind. But one of the most important things that we can do for this is to actually reach outside for help. Make that mind present outside, whether you think that's through, the function of even like psychedelic compounds, which we talk about just ad nauseum on this channel, the psychedelia literally means to make the mind present. The whole point of these, especially in this space, a lot of times we refer to these things as functionally medicines. If we're thinking of them as medicines, they're functionally mental health medicines. But realize that mental health is not something that's really like, you don't fight the battle against mental health inside of like a trans-dimensional egg interfacing with a geometric being that's producing sound waves you can taste. That's not where you interface with mental health. It's right here. It's when you're staring in the mirror at your house by yourself. Like that's when you really, really meet that thing. And where it's different than other things is that like it's already inside. And we don't really understand yet how to interface with what is functionally to us right now, that kind of threat. This is why it can be so helpful to be open about your experiences, is because it does help them be out, but not just for you. When you're open with your experiences, it gives other people a safe space to come forward and share their experiences. I'm sure you've had so many times in your life where like you had some kind of memory that you didn't really remember you remembered, for instance, but then somebody started talking about a really great time that they had, and you remember when you had a time similar. So you and this triggers this thing. It basically gives that liminal safe space to your mind in order to re-engage this thing that you thought that you had forgotten. It creates a vessel for that. Literally like the sound of your voice and the things that you choose to say, the story that you tell, creates the space for somebody to be able to re-experience their own story. This is just unbelievably powerful because it's altogether possible that they could re-experience their story in a way that they never have before. Perhaps it would be a for lack of a better word, a healthier way, something that was more positive, something that they could feel better about. That's really at the core of it for me. It's not about right, wrong, anything like that. So which one do you feel better about? You know? Like I kind of decided today that like it'll probably be short and it'll probably just be an electronic book, but I probably will end up actually writing a book. So just so that I can give it out to people, because there are some really simple ways that we can ensure that we're navigating towards things that make us feel better. and not allowing the things that make us feel worse to either be repressed or bypassed, which are functionally both formats of repression. And I think a lot of times in culture, even myself, I'm very, very guilty of this in various stages of my life. I've utilized these exploration of really like big brain concepts, spirituality, esoteric stuff, witchcraft, all kinds of stuff as basically a way to bypass the fact that like I'm right here, right now, inside of my own brain, and I need to be able to deal with that. And I think we all actually have a little bit harder time dealing with that than we would like to admit in most cases. Certainly, we have a harder time dealing with that than we would like to have. We would like that to be effortless. I don't think that the problem lies entirely inside of any one person. I think the problem lies inside of the society. But the society is a whole that is the sum of its parts. Every single individual has multiple responsibilities that they can choose to take, and I personally believe they should take inside of this situation because whether they like it or not, they do have the power in the space. And thus, it seems through my exploration that when you have power over something, you inevitably take its responsibility, whether you would like it or not. Where we have a responsibility inside of this kind of space is to actually care about other people. But that actually looks an awful lot like caring about ourselves. Being willing to be authentic with ourselves, being willing to step forward, share our story, being willing to be completely authentic and vulnerable to who we are right now. Because no matter what kind of mask somebody else puts on, you never know until you know, especially when it comes to how someone's feeling deep down inside. I've worked with a lot of people in my life. I've had just an enormous amount of friends and acquaintances. I've been the popular guy for my entire life. The only reason that I haven't had 80 trillion people around me is because I keep to myself despite that popularity. I've had so many damn relationships, and this is like, so to some people that sounds like a blessing. It's not necessarily. I've had, big respect to Byron, but he's I don't know, like my 75th friend that's committed suicide in my life. I spent a lot of time where I sat around, I thought about committing suicide. Like I was almost on that list myself. Then that list would be much shorter right now. But like I was very lucky inside of that space that I had been gifted with the ability to learn. I had been gifted with a lot of things that actually honestly they aren't even gifts, really they were curses. And I had to temper them and find the good inside of them. I have an unbelievable tenacity, resilience, eh, to a point where I will actually hurt myself with these things. I will put myself through situations that are just unbelievably difficult, that are impossible, simply because I'll tell myself, hey man, if anybody could do it, it would be you. But sometimes that ends up getting me into situations where, I mean, first, maybe that's a delusion of grandeur. Maybe it's not me that would be able to do it. But also, maybe it's just a situation that nobody's actually supposed to even be able to do. Maybe nobody's supposed to do that alone. Maybe no one is supposed to operate like that. Maybe it's a flaw of our culture. Perhaps it's a flaw of our society. Perhaps it's just a flaw of our own hearts or our own minds, or perhaps it's just the nature of our current positioning. That's even something that we would think that maybe we were supposed to do that on our own. What if handling our own mind is exactly this? If we're actually a collected consciousness, why are we operating in separatism, keeping our own mind to ourselves as though it is actually our own, in an attempt to hide parts of the mind from other people because we fear them, all the way to the point that, like, suicide is the fastest growing rate, reasoning for death that exists. It's not the COVID pandemic. It's not cancer. It's not heart disease. The only reason that even like conditions that are guaranteeing that our life is getting what most people consider worse, for instance, like an Alzheimer's, the only reason those are even actually existing more is because we have a significantly longer life expectancy. And that's a thing that seems to happen just with old age. We don't know why it happens. We'll figure it out. We'll fix it because we figured every other thing out with the human body. And any parts that we haven't, there's people hard at work on it right now, and they're unbelievably fucking brilliant, and they're dedicating their time to that. to ensure that a lot of people don't have to basically suffer and experience that they don't want to suffer. And maybe we don't do this perfectly right now. Who gives a fuck about that? Stop focusing on the problems all the time. Make sure that we're 100% focusing also on the fact that, like, there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of great work, and there's a lot of great people in the world. There's a lot of people that really do care. There's a lot of people that really do want to help. Perhaps you're one of those people. Perhaps you're one of the people that needs help. Either way, know that on both sides of that, functionally, you have a responsibility to share your story, because perhaps you're not even supposed to be figuring out your mind by yourself. I, by most measures, have my mind figured out a lot better than most people do. Shit, I know a lot more psychology than most people. I didn't fucking do this by myself. Not even close. I don't think ever for even 1 second that I did this by myself. I learned from you. Whoever you are that's watching this, someone exactly like you. I learned through your stories. I learned through your experiences. I learned through what you learned. I was listening. I was asking. I was seeking. And so I learned those things. I figured out, this works, that works. This one, it worked for them. It didn't work for me. I went through the time that it took to be able to see what worked for me. But I didn't do that on my own. Yeah, I had to put in the hours, but I had to have something to put in the hours on. You know, when I was born, I was just like everybody else. I didn't know how to walk, didn't know how to feed myself, didn't know how to do shit. I sure as hell didn't know how to navigate my mind through a society that might not even be functioning in a way that is actually best for my interests, in a world where the standard is functionally separation, where even the sine qua non, or the highest possible like goal, is to basically settle down with just my little family and a white picket fence, and we're supposed to be this little separated unit. I mean, I'm not saying any of these things can't work, but I am saying that we live on a planet with 8 billion other people, and we're technically all in the same place. We're all in the same body. We all have all the same parts. We all see the same things. We're inside of the same kind of societies. Like, basically, the same society covers the entirety of the earth right now. I don't know if you've ever gone to places where society used to be different, or maybe you lived a life that was outside of the bounds of society at one point in time, but it's the same everywhere now. Even in the middle of the Amazon jungle, the people operate is so similar at this point in time. It's crazy. We're the same. Everybody's the same. There's like these separations are so minor. And we worry about these whatever, some kind of sicknesses or cancers or these things. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't give some kind of focus to doing something to overcome that. But why aren't we paying attention to the affliction that literally every single person has, which is their own psyche, their own inability to traverse their own psyche? Why are we not looking at this every single day, recognizing that this is a thing that's really killing us? And if it's not killing us, it's not even ever allowing us to live. I've worked with people that are so deep inside of depression that they could have everything going for them in the world, and they would still basically need a phone call in order to ensure that they didn't, go drink a ton of alcohol and drive themselves off a fucking cliff that night. Just because, like, they can't deal with some of the things that they did to get there. They can't deal with some of the things that they experienced. I'm not going to go into the specifics of anybody's stories because I actually care about the privacy that we have when we work together. I care about respecting them like that. They didn't have to share that shit with me. They could have been like a lot of other people out there, and they could have kept that inside of themselves. They could have let it sit there and fester. And then maybe they would have been another person on the list that decided to commit suicide. And I'm glad they didn't do that. And I hope other people choose to do that with me in the future. So every single time that I take a step, I don't care whether there's a camera rolling or there's people watching, I always take into account whether or not I'm respecting their story and creating that kind of space. Whether I'm actually doing something to enhance the life that I'm inside of. Not the lives of others around me, not a specific person, but life as a thing that is around me, the thing I live inside of. Am I doing the thing that's best for the fly that landed right there? Am I doing the best for the grass or the plants that I maybe am walking on right now? But also, am I respecting these people? Am I respecting their stories properly? Am I respecting their space? Am I respecting the fact that, like, when you take away titles, time spent educating about stuff that potentially doesn't actually matter, all these other things. When you strip down all of the things, we're exactly the same fucking thing. There's no difference. One experience. Each thing is having one experience. We can learn a lot from each other's one experiences, but we have to be brave enough to share that shit. One thing that was great about this guy right here is that he was actually willing to share that shit. This guy would like he'd talk about how he was like completely struggling with depression and what his story was, sitting in front of 25,000 people watching him, and 5,000 of those people would like be fucking rude and tell him that he should kill himself or fucking get over it, or what are you whining about? You've made fucking $700 in donations while you've been on this little 20-minute tirade of yours. It doesn't matter how much fucking money that he made during that time. It doesn't matter how many people are watching him. Now we see, right? Like the people who are the naysayers, the people who like to talk shit, they have a tendency to be really loud. But the people who are being actually helped, they don't get to speak up because they're too busy crying and engaging themselves and actually getting something beneficial out of that. And those people are coming forward in the case of this individual. Now, you see, like, I mean, I can just bring it up right now. So his website was basically refitted as a rest in peace thing. Go ahead and share this real quick. So the website here, very simple. But this was brought up earlier today, and it said 11,000 people have left messages. 66,000 people decided to click this little heart click thing here. But some of the stories that people have posted on here, it's just absolutely incredible, how many different people get touched by something like that. You've kept me company. You've been able to help me in ways you wouldn't even know. You gave me hope. I wish in some way I could return the favor. This is just a random one selected there in the middle. The point is, despite all of that bullshit, despite the fact that, well, people like him had people literally directly sitting there in their chat telling them they need to shut up with their emo shit because they got the good life and all these things. Or whether it's people like me who was trying to stand up basically for people's rights and for them helping themselves, sometimes even facing the adversity of that individual themselves. When really I only just wanted to be there to help. I can't tell you how many times just through basically attempting to help someone and me maybe not knowing how to do that perfect, because I don't claim to be perfect at that. I just claim to try really fucking hard, and I've spent just an enormous amount of time trying to get better at it. And as a byproduct of that, I think I do all right. But regardless, even though I'm not maybe doing it perfectly, I've had people completely, utterly demonize me. I've had people's families that I was helping call me everything you could possibly imagine. I've been called the names of demons. I've been called every cuss word in the book, every kind of name that you can think about. And like, I honestly don't give a flying fuck whether anybody believes me, but I haven't done a single fucking thing in the last 20 years to try and hurt someone. I've only done shit to help people, despite the adversity. And what that adversity tells me is that, like, yo, we gotta fucking do something about this. Even the people that are trying to help face adversity when they're literally just trying to help. We're trying to help the world stop getting killed by the number one killer of the world, and we still face adversity. This adversity basically starts inside of ourselves. We have that adversity against ourselves. We are afraid to get help. We are afraid to actually accept what we have gone through and figure out how to work with it. We are afraid to accept the responsibility of managing our own mind. We're afraid to accept the responsibility of holding space for other people to be able to manage their minds. which is functionally actually caring for someone and nurturing them, providing that safe space, providing the space that's when maybe they don't have a traumatic story, just not making one, ensuring that they have the space for them to actually be who they are and really explore the story that is them uniquely, not trying to change them into being something else, but appreciating them for what they are. This is the reason why people are all shut away, is because they don't feel safe to do that. You wonder why everybody has, solar plexus issues. Obesity can be linked to solar plexus issues. Obesity massively on the rise over the last 20 years of life. People have security issues. They're fucking scared. They feel unsafe. They feel like there are not the places, the spaces, and the resources needed in order to do the things that they feel like they need to do. That kind of safety. And this is predominantly with their mind. I've attempted in so many ways. This channel and the other things that are associated to it are just one of many ways to create some kind of safe space for people to be able to do this. Heretofore, every single one of them has failed, but I just try again because it fails maybe at the scale that I make it out in my mind. I learn a whole bunch, but it sure as hell helps a bunch of people in the time that it's there. But I've always been trying to basically generate a fractal effect, and really, I hope that I can do that again here. I really honestly kind of beg of you to become this kind of stand for the people that are in your life, regardless of how capable you think you are, regardless of how trained you think you are. Realize that an untrained person that is willing to help is 1,000 times more effective than even the most trained person who isn't willing to help. They will not put in any effort whatsoever. If you're willing to help, you've already done half the battle. I didn't know fucking shit when I started helping. I don't personally think that I know much of anything now. It seems like the topics just get more expansive as I learn more about them. But I knew nothing when I started trying to help other people. But I learned over time because it turned out that helping other people was really actually helping myself. So please help the other people around you and help yourself in the process. Help them by being authentic to who you are, accepting who they are when they operate authentically, and giving them the space to be able to do that. The number one way that I think that we can start to do this inside of our life is actually with an extremely simple term. We are very reserved with this term, and we keep it, subset into these very specific spaces. And even when we do use it, we know that we have these basically compartmentalizations of it. The word I'm referencing is the word love, but more specifically the terminology, I love you. And I urge you to try and get yourself to a place where when you say that, you mean something that you can share with everyone, including yourself. If you're reserving the concept of loving someone to all these compartmentalizations, and you haven't specifically carved out a compartmentalization that is for loving yourself, or loving things you find to be unlovable, or loving things that don't love themselves, these kinds of things. Guys, when you start making boxes with something like that, rather than finding a way to understand it that you can apply it liberally to everything, you then end up setting yourself up with a very big job. You need to create a box for it everywhere. This is a fine way of going about it, but it requires you to create that space and have the tools to fill that space to be able to do something with it. If you want to be able to do that, you need to learn. You need to reach out to other people who are already trained in this. You need to educate yourself, whether it be through reading things on the internet. Really use all the things. If you're really serious about it, use all the things, every possible way to educate yourself. Because the more you know, the more you can do. All the time. And especially when it comes to psychology. Even if you never help another person on the planet, it won't really matter in the long run because you will help yourself. Undoubtedly. And so I urge you, whatever position you are, whether you feel that you are the person with the trauma that's on the verge of suicide, that thinks about it consistently, please be brave and reach out to other people. There are people out there that want to help. This community is people that want to help. I'm people that want to help. I literally know hundreds and hundreds of people who not only want to help, but are very, very well equipped to do exactly that. You don't have to be alone. You don't have to be confused. That's not how it has to be. It doesn't have to keep trending downwards. It doesn't have to keep getting worse. If it can get worse, it can get better. This is the nature of duality. If it can go one way, it can most definitely go the other way. I urge you, if you are in that space, reach out to somebody. There's hotlines, there's me, there's Facebook groups, there's communities everywhere. But just be brave, be willing to talk, be willing to share your story, be willing to step up and go, I need help. I'm not where I want to be. I really do want to get there. I need help. Nobody you idolize for anything got where they are without help. You do not need to do it on your own. In fact, it is likely impossible to do it completely on your own. We talk about a lot about, it's all you, and these things. Realize, like, when we're saying that, this is a multi-dimensional statement. It's all you. That means the people outside of you are you as well. Your experience is you entirely. As far as you are collapsing it into your perception, it is all you. So reaching out to other people, being willing to share your story with other people, is being willing to express your story that has heretofore, if you are this person, been hurting you, been hindering you, been oppressing you, holding you back. This is a physical demonstration of your willingness to introduce that concept, that part of your mind, to another part of your mind that it does not know yet. And when we make these kinds of relationships, we have these kinds of interactions, we have the ability to literally change reality, change a mind. If you believe what I believe, literally change everything through these kinds of connections. I think it's the way that everything changes. And I think everything's changed. When we take actions that physicalize the metaphysical, magic becomes mechanic. Magic stays magic when it's something that you spend time imagining, dreaming about, pretending you do, pretending you are, telling yourself you'll be one day, wishing for, all of these things. And it's fun to hold on to the concept of magic, but it's significantly funner to use it. And you are very magical. Many of the things that I 100% assure every single human can do can really only be explained functionally as magic. Respect this in yourself. Respect that in other people. Respect that, sometimes what looks like the stupidest person might have the smartest thing to say if you give them the opportunity. If you ignore that potential, then they definitely will not say anything that will benefit your life. If you give someone else the space to talk, especially if you give someone else the space to talk about you, there's a significantly higher potential that they will say something that benefits you. But it will also allow them to be themselves. It will allow you to see yourself. It will allow you to introduce yourself to new parts of your mind that you have not met yet. Your loneliness is a byproduct of being too rigid. Your box is too small. The part of your mind that you live in has not been introduced to enough other parts of your mind. You experience this as a physical loneliness of people not being around, but if you had tons of people around, you'd still feel it. You experience this as a lack of security because you do not have enough money, but if you had enough money, you'd still feel insecure. All these things are actually the same thing because these are all symptoms. These are not problems. These are symptoms. The problem is the forefront of human consciousness. Ground zero, the front lines, the human mind. That's the problem. But as I like to say, the solution always resides inside the riddle. And that's exactly where you are, all the time, inside your mind. If your mind is the problem, know that you are the solution. If your mind is the question, know that you are the answer. But you cannot find this if you continue to look in the exact same place. You must be willing to open yourself to new experiences, to new people, to sharing your story with things you otherwise wouldn't, by hearing the stories of things you otherwise wouldn't, by actually communing with each other. We just might actually create a community. And then, if we have a community, perhaps we won't all feel so fucking lonely. I love you. Thanks for helping me feel less lonely. If you took the time to listen to this, thanks for just doing that. I hope your life feels great. Maybe it feels a little better. Or maybe you can make someone else's life feel better. Either way, thanks for being here. Thanks for being you. We will catch you on the flip side, whatever that means. Tomorrow's always new and it can be anything that we want. Let's make it a better place. We don't have to change the entire world. If we can change ourselves and everybody focuses on that, the entire world will have already changed.